appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trusts in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Item number 2, the minutes. Senator Kieran Bell, Vice President, you have the floor.
Madam President, I move that the consideration of the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, the 15th of March, 2023 be deferred.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes are deferred. Thank you, Senator Kieran Bell. Item number 3, messages.
No messages, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Sumner. Item number 4, reports of committees. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. We have several announcements, and they are in the name of the Junior Minister of Finance, Senator Arian Health, sorry. Junior Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam.
Senator Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate, the Pharmacy and Poisons Control of Prescriptions Regulation 2022 is made by the Minister responsible for health under the provisions of Section 48(1)(c) of the Pharmacy and Poisons Act 1979. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the following sets of public health COVID-19 regulations and orders. The Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Powers No. 2 Regulations 2022, Savings Provisions Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Powers No. 2 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Powers Phased Reopening Amendment No. 2 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Powers Phased Reopening Amendment No. 3 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Powers Regulation 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Amendment No. 2 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Amendment No. 3 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Amendment No. 4 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Amendment No. 5 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Amendment No. 6 Regulations 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Extension Order 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Order 2022, the Public Health COVID-19 Regulations 2022, Revocation Regulations 2022, and the Public Health COVID-19 Regulations 2022. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the following orders as made by the Minister responsible for health in exercise of the power conferred by Section 9 of the Quarantine Act 2017 after consultation with the Chief Medical Officer. The Quarantine COVID-19 No. 3 Amendment No. 3 Order 2022, the Quarantine COVID-19 No. 3 Amendment No. 4 Order 2022, the Quarantine COVID-19 No. 3 Amendment No. 5 Order 2022, the Quarantine COVID-19 No. 3 Amendment No. 6 Order 2022, the Quarantine COVID-19 Order 2022, Revocation Order 2022, and the Quarantine COVID-19 Order 2022. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Hudson, Junior Minister of Health. Moving on with our agenda, item number 6, notices of motion, there are none. Item number 7, petitions, there are none. Item number 8, statements, we have one statement, and that is in the name of Minister Darrell. Minister Darrell, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President. Thank
Good
you very
morning.
much. Madam President, on Saturday, March 18th, 2023, the Ministry of Youth, Culture, and Sport, through the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation, hosted its 41st Annual Sports Awards at the Fairmont Hamilton Princess. This year's Sports Awards recognize the distinguished achievements of the island's top Bermudian athletes, officials, and supporters for their contribution to sports from 2022. The theme of this year's ceremony was Sport Matters. Madam President, our national sports policy guides us with a 5-year promise to raise the value of sport in Bermuda. The 41st Annual Sports Awards was an example of government's commitment to do so. Several awards were given out in various categories. The top award, Athlete of the Year, is presented to athletes who have achieved an obvious level of maintained excellence during the calendar year in sport, was presented to the following. The Male Athlete of the Year was Janai Parent-Chief. And the Female Athlete of the Year was Dame Flora Duffy. As you would note, Madam President, these are the same recipients of last year. The Junior Male Athlete of the Year was Sebastian Kemp, and Junior Female Athlete of the Year was Caitlin Bobb. These athletes have proven once again that sport matters, as this, as I just mentioned, was their second consecutive year of achieving these awards. What an accomplishment, Madam President. Madam President, as the Minister of Sport, I have the distinct pleasure of selecting and presenting awards to the athletes of our national sports of football and cricket. The awardees in these categories were, for football, Mr. McCreel Walker, and the female footballer was Ms. Janai Simmons. And for cricket, the Minister's Award went to Alan Douglas Jr. Awards were also presented in the following categories. The Senior Achievement Award. This award is for participation and achievement at a high standard of performance in international and national competition. The male recipients of these Senior Achievement Awards was Janai Parent-Chief, Caden Hopkins, Dage Miners, Tyler Smith, and Connor White. The female recipients were Dame Flora Duffy, Erica Hawley, Jessica Lewis, Caitlin Conyers, and Sakari Famous. The Junior Achievement Awards, male went to Sebastian Kemp, Oliver Bescott, Paul Rodriguez Jr., and Callan Todd. Female Junior Achievement Awards went to Caitlin Bobb, Fenella Whiteman, Annabelle Miller, and Khalees Wade. The Appreciation Award. This award is presented to persons who conduct international amateur games at all levels in Bermuda, and also to those who have community sports categories. The top, programs that have significant impact on the community. These awards went to Back to Basics Running and the Bermuda Volleyball Association. Special Achievement Awards. This award is presented to individuals other than athletes who have made significant and sustained contribution to sport. These awards went to Gary LeBlanc, Ian Truan, and Ian Pilgrim. The Sports Citation Award. This award is presented to those who have distinguished themselves, both past and present. These awards went to Gary Venning in golf, Ken Thorne, para athletics, Megan Troke, field hockey, Richard Mallory in tennis, and Emerson Carrington in cricket. Special Recognition Awards. These awards recognize those athletes who have achieved special status or distinction in sport. These awards went to the under-17 Carifta Girls Relay Team, that was the 4x400, the Men's Davis Cup Team, and the Women's National Hockey Team, as well as the under-20 Women's Relay Team, also in 4x400 meters. Madam President, the ministry was excited to showcase once again this year's event where we celebrated the best and brightest in our sporting community. This camaraderie and national pride displayed during the awards was enjoyed by all, and we look forward to another year of excellence in sport. I would like to thank the Sports Awards Committee and the staff at the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation for hosting a stellar event. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Minister Darrell, Minister of Youth, Culture, Youth and Sport. Moving on with our agenda. Introduction of bills, there are none. First reading of public bills, there are none. First reading of private bills, there are none. Item number 12, question period. Senators, we will now entertain questions on the statement that has just been given by the minister. Sorry, Senator. Opposition Leader Ben Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning.
Good morning.
First, I'd like to thank the minister for bringing this statement this morning, and I'd like to join with him in congratulating all of the winners over the weekend. It is always great for us to have an opportunity to celebrate the people that are doing very positive things in sport in our country and all over the world. I have a couple of questions for the minister just so that we can continue to build towards supporting our athletes. On page 2, I noted that the awardees for the national sports, there was a male and a female for football, but there was only a male for cricket. Was there not an application for a female athlete? Because I know that there is a building program within cricket, and it will be important that we're seeing that representation. My next question would be if the minister could give us some information on the awards that are actually presented. Is this just a trophy in celebration, or will we be giving some kind of monetary incentive to these athletes that have not only worked hard over the previous year, but achieved at a really high level with the expenses of training and travel and increased expenses that everybody's going through? It will be important that we don't just support them with our, congratulations, but we're actually supporting them in a way that is going to be tangible for them to continue to strive to perform. So if the minister can give us some clarity on whether that is the level of support that we will be looking to do in the future, specifically for our high achieving athletes that are going to need that support. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith, on your 2 questions. Would any other senator care to ask questions? Senator Robin Tucker, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam
morning.
President. I would like to know whether the minister can expand a bit on how the top athlete of the year is actually selected. The statement does say it's an obvious level of maintained excellence during the calendar year, but for those of us that don't sort of know what that process involves, if he can expand on that. The second question would be, does the Sports Awards Committee, or is there a board, monitor on an ongoing basis local and overseas sports performance? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Hearing none, then it's over to you, Minister Darrell.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the senators for their questions. I'd like to start by the first one. As Senator Smith did point out, the Bermuda Cricket Board have been trying for many years now to increase female participation in cricket. To my knowledge, I don't think they've actually progressed to the level where they're able to have a sustained league. I'm happy to see that the BFA did restart to much success their female soccer league last summer, and I think they have plans to expand it and do more this year. But to his specific question, there was no application sent in or recommendation or nomination for cricket, female cricketer of the year. So I did not have one to choose from. To the second question, it was a very good question, is one that I actually did ask as well. We do recognize at this award ceremony sports excellence, and we do such by way of very nice certificates with an official seal, many photographs, and unfortunately at this time, while we do not give a monetary check for these awards, on the front end, the Bermuda government does make significant investments by way of grants to the official national sports governing bodies. So the information of which Senator Smith talked about as far as assistance, while no grant is going to fully cover the expenses needed by anyone training at these elite levels. Happy to note, and we'll be talking about it in another budget later this week, that there are significant investments that are being made and will continue to be made to these very individuals that you saw pick up and be recognized on Saturday evening. And we talked about, Senator Tucker asked, how do we come up with the winners? And I'm happy to say that the selection committee is a well thought out process. And I want to actually name them because I did not name them in my statement, but the selection committee was made up of Miss Debbie Jones Hunter, who, as everybody knows, is a star in her own right in athletics. Mr. Ralph Bean Jr., who is a currently football, is his sport. Mr. Earl Baisden, who is a prominent member of the sporting media. Mr. Mike Cherry, and Dexter Smith also, people will recognize him as a prominent member of the media. So what those individuals do, they meet, and they take a very long time, and they go through all of the applications, all of the nominations that are sent in. They go through them. It takes them the better part of an entire weekend. And they meet together and they come up with different criteria. Now, I am not involved in what the specific criteria are, and I think it's good that the minister stays out of that, as well as members from the department. But we give them all the tools and all the information that they need, and we give them the information. And as far as monitoring accomplishments over the years by athletics, yes, that is something that the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation do through the sports officers, and I want to recognize them as well, Mr. Jacon Adnis, Mr. Macy O'Deal, as well as their support staff, all led by, as we know, the Director of Youth, Sport, and Recreation, Mrs. K. Cherise Bean. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister. Any further questions or supplemental? Third question for you.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to follow on with the response that the minister gave regarding the funding that is given to athletes through the grant program. A lot of times that application process is specifically for the sport, and a lot of that is going to go into administration. It's going to go into running how that sport runs locally. So what I'm specifically looking for us to build towards, I know that the minister said that it isn't happening at present, but is there a thought towards getting to the point where these awards will actually have monetary backing so that we can support the athletes that are excelling, which then brings the motivation for the athletes behind to know that that hard work is going to lead to more support? Because in many cases, our athletes have to drop out of sport at some point just because of this financial burden that happens, even though we are supporting at the sport level. At that top level, the expenses are high, and the fact that they are achieving should be rewarded more than just with finances. So if the minister can just give us some clarity of whether that is the direction that the government is trying to move towards, considering that in the sports policy, we are talking about more support, but we need to see that actual support. And in many cases, that is going to be the financial support that is going to help those athletes move forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith. That was your third question. And I believe Senator Tucker, you have your third question.
Thank you, Madam President. I would also like to piggyback on a question that that Minister Darrell, a statement rather that Minister Darrell made about in response to there not being a female awardee for cricket. So what I would like to know is, since cricket is Bermuda's national sport, does the ministry have any plans to maybe partner with the Department of Education to promote cricket for girls in schools? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Minister Darrell.
I'm going to start. Excuse me. I'm going to start on Senator Tucker's question and work
And then,
backwards.
okay.
interesting that you say that. In a conversation that I had with ICC officials recently in the regional qualifiers down in Argentina, it was actually raised with me by the regional director of ICC, Ms. Faragosi, who recognized while she was on island last summer that the female cricket had a small amount of individuals, and just up the hill at the BFA field, there were large scores of people watching female football. And her question at the time, and she reiterated it to me when we met a few weeks ago, was what can we do and what type of support can the ICC give to raise the profile of female cricket in Bermuda? So that is something that is definitely on our radar. As Senator Tucker will know, that the Bermuda Cricket Board has remit over the running of cricket, but we are in discussions with them, also including the ICC, to see what we can do to increase female participation in cricket. I know that recently they've had every Saturday Pee Wee cricket that has been going on for youngsters aged 6, 7, and 8. And I take my son, who's not a female, but he goes at 2 p.m. and immediately preceding that at 1 p.m., there are many girls who are there doing the Pee Wee girls cricket. So it is something that actually is happening in the community. And unfortunately, once you have a youth program, and if you've never had a major cricket female league in Bermuda, it's going to actually take some time before we actually get to a point at sports awards where I'm awarding an award to a female cricketer. If we're really starting at the grassroots level, but I think we are in the right direction. And I hope I'm wrong. And the next time I bring a statement about awarding top athletes in Bermuda, that I can mention a female cricketer. So I hope that answers Senator Tucker's question. Now, Senator Smith, speaking again on investment that we make and specifically to individual athletes, I don't want to give away all the information that I'm going to be giving later this week in my debate when we talk about specifically the funding that is goes to the Ministry of Youth, Culture, and Sport. However, I can tell you, and you might have heard in some of my other statements, that the Bermuda government has increased funding specifically to elite and high-performing athletes. Now, previously, and I'm getting deep into the weeds now, but previously, we used to give that funding to a particular national sports governing body. But we are making some additional funding that will be separate and aside from that, where some funding will go directly to some high-performing and individual athletes in their specific needs. And I'd like to also point out that the Bermuda government is currently supporting athletes who are participating overseas, and support, as I've come to realize, Madam President, comes in many different forms. Yes, the obvious and easy way of support is everyone says, well, cut me a check. But an athlete will tell you, and I know Senator Smith will know and understand this, that support for individual athletes and even their families comes in many different ways. And the Bermuda government is currently doing some of that. We'll talk about it more, I think, on Wednesday. And we are looking to do even more. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Darrell, and thank you, senators, for your participation. Moving on then to the on our agenda, we move to item number 13, orders of the day. And the first item is the resolution into committee of the whole for further consideration of the Appropriation Act 2023, together with the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the financial year 2023-2024. And I turn over to Senator Ariana Hudson, Junior Minister of Finance. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole for further consideration of the Appropriation Act 2023, together with the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 2023-2024.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson. And for the sake of the listening audience, I would just like to indicate that during these debates, it's I turn it over to the other senators. And this morning, we have Senator John White, who would take the chair. Senator White, I invite you to take the chair at this time.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, we are now in Committee of the Whole for further consideration of the Appropriation Act 2023, together with estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 2023, 2024. The ministry under consideration is the Ministry of National Security. The heads for debate under this ministry are Head 83, which can be found on page B 258. Head 6 on Defense, which can be found on page B 261. Head 7 on the Police, which can be found on B 267. Head 12 on Customs, which can be found on page B 271. Head 25 on the Department of Corrections, which can be found on head page B 275. And finally, head 45 on the Fire Services, which can be found on head page B 278. The number of hours allocated to these heads are 3. The senator in charge is Senator Dill. The start time on my watch says 10:28. Senator, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee do now take into consideration head number 83, Ministry of National Security Headquarters, head 06, Defense, head 07, Police, head number 12, Customs, head number 25, Department of Corrections, and head number 45, Fire Services.
Thank you, Senator. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I am pleased to present the current account estimate for the Ministry of National Security Headquarters, head number 83, which can be found on pages B257 to B260 of the Estimates of Revenue and Expenditure book. Mr. Chairman, I will briefly discuss the ministry as a whole, followed by information for head 83, the ministry headquarters, and then in detail for each of the heads under the ministry, namely head 06, Defense, head 07, Police, head number 12, Customs, head 25, Department of Corrections, and head 45, Fire Services. Mr. Chairman, 3 hours have been allocated by the opposition for this ministry. For a ministry of this size, importance, and budget, that is not a significant amount of time. However, I will be as brief as possible so that there will be time for the opposition to ask any questions or seek clarification on the financial year 2023 to 24 estimates of revenue and expenditure. Mission. Mr. Chairman, the mission of the Ministry of National Security Headquarters is working together to keep you safe. Mr. Chairman, the mission statements Programs and budgets within the ministry are aligned with this overriding mission. Mr. Chairman, I will briefly highlight some of the priorities of the ministry for the next financial year before moving to the expenditure overview. Priorities. Mr. Chairman, violence and antisocial behavior continues to plague our community. Combating it continues to be a primary focus of this ministry, and the budgets for the departments reflect this focus. This includes increased funding for additional officers at Customs and the Coast Guard to tighten our borders to interdict and deter the importation of weapons and drugs. Increased funding for refurbished dock scanner to interdict and deter the importation of weapons and drugs. Increased funding for additional officers at the Bermuda Police Service will get criminals off the street and deter criminal activity. Increased funding for the Gang Violence Reduction Team to provide focused programs for at-risk youth to assist those vulnerable youth with better life choices and options other than gangs, violence, and antisocial behavior. A new island-wide CCTV system, an upgraded CCTV system that will aid in the identification of suspects in the event of criminal activity, serve as a deterrent to potential criminals, and provide increased safety for our community. Mr. Chairman, this government recognizes the major role that information and communication technology plays both in business and our personal lives. With that dependency comes risk. To mitigate that risk, we will shortly be tabling cybersecurity and cybercrime legislation. I will speak in more detail on these further on in my presentation. Expenditure overview. Mr. Chairman, I will now draw your attention to page B257 of the estimates book, where you will note that the Ministry of National Security budget for the financial year 2023 to 2024 is $131,334,000, an increase of $6,621,000, or 5%, which will be discussed in more detail in the individual heads. This increase is mainly owing to the funding of vacant and previously unfunded posts, which will be addressed in the respective departments' budget briefs. Mr. Chairman, page B257 shows a revenue estimate for the ministry of $1,468,000, a $414,000 increase, or 39%, over financial year 2022 to 23, which will also be discussed in more detail in the individual heads. Mr. Chairman, page B257 also details the current account expenditure of the departments that make up the overall budget for the ministry by head as follows. Head number 83, $2,683,000, which is the ministry headquarters. Head number 6, Defense, which is $8,558,000. Head 7, Police, $62,625,000. Head number 12, Customs, $17,696,000. Head 25, Corrections, $24,892,000. And 45, Fire Services, $14,880,000. The ministry total being $131,334,000. Mr. Chairman, page B257 also details a capital budget of $5,815,000, which I will address in more detail in the respective heads' budget estimates. Mr. Chairman, you will also note on page B257 that the employee numbers are increasing from 23 to 24, from 1,065 to 1,106. This is an increase of 41 funded posts, or 4%. I will address the changes that make up this total in each of the heads' budgets. Head number 83, Ministry Headquarters. Mr. Chairman, I now turn to the current account estimates for Head 83, the Ministry Headquarters, which can be found on page B258. Mr. Chairman, the objectives of the Ministry Headquarters are to ensure the minister's policy objectives are met, to ensure that the ministry and departments deliver services effectively and comply with relevant legislation, policies, and procedures, to plan, mitigate, and respond to threats to security, to reduce crime and antisocial behavior, to promote public safety. Mr. Chairman, the Ministry of National Security Headquarters budget allocation of $2,683,000 for 2023 to 2024 represents an increase of $665,000 or a 33% increase over the 2022 to 23 budget allocation. This is primarily to provide a $325,000 increase to the gang violence reduction team program, $150,000 to cover the fees for the Liquor License Authority, and $190,000 for legal fees and incidentals. General summary. Mr. Chairman, on page B258 of the current account estimates, you will note that there are 7 business units within the ministry headquarters. The estimate for business unit 93000 administration is $1,567,000, an increase of $360,000 or 30%. This comprises $150,000 to cover the fees for the Liquor License Authority and $190,000 for legal fees and incidentals and $20,000 for maintenance fees for radio equipment. Mr. Chairman, the estimates for business units 93002, 93003, and 93004 are for the Parole Board, Treatment of Offenders Board, and Police Complaints Authority, respectively, and are unchanged from the original and revised estimates for financial year 2022 to 23. Mr. Chairman, all of the costs that make up the $20,000 associated with 93007 have been included in 93000. Mr. Chairman, Business Unit 93008 relates to the Gang Violence Reduction Program with an estimate for financial year 2023 to 24 of $946,000. This represents a $325,000 increase or 52% increase over financial year 2022 to 23 in order for the team to expand programs to tackle the scourge of gang violence in our community by early intervention with our at-risk youth. Mr. Chairman, the final business unit in the general summary on page B258 is for business units that are not being funded this year. That is 93997. The National Health Emergency, which was created for COVID response, including the quarantine hotel costs, which are not anticipated in financial year 2023 to 24. Subjective analysis. Mr. Chairman, I would now like to address page B259 of the current account estimates. This page includes the subjective analysis of current account estimates and the employee numbers or full-time equivalents. Mr. Chairman, 4 of the object codes see no change in estimates for financial year 2023 to 24 over the original budget of 2022 to 23, and I will therefore limit my comments to the other 9 that have been changed. Salaries increased by $72,000 or 10% to reflect a regrading of a job description and filling of an administrative post, which was previously held by a temporary employee. Training has been decreased by $16,000 or 44% to reflect the decreased need for training for national security risks. Further decreases are also reflected in travel by $20,000 or 33% as meetings and training continue to take place remotely. Increases are reflected in communications by $15,000 or 63% for cybersecurity. Professional services by $533,000 or 61% to cover fees for the Liquor License Authority, legal fees, and short-term counseling for victims of gang violence. Repair and maintenance has increased by $2,000 or 200%, mainly for photocopier maintenance fees. Insurance of $20,000 is for the radio tower equipment, which was initially allocated to 93007. Materials and supplies have increased by $30,000 or 33% to support the increase in programs for the gang violence reduction team. There has also been an increase of $29,000 or 17% in other expenses, primarily for expansion of cybersecurity capabilities. Mr. Chairman, in respect for revenue for Head 83, it should be noted that the Liquor License Authority was transferred to the ministry on the 4th of April, 2022. It is anticipated that the fees will increase to $450,000 as the country resumes to near normalcy of the opening of restaurants, bars, and special events following the COVID pandemic. Mr. Chairman, the employee numbers of full-time equivalents has decreased to 7 with the elimination of one post, the personal staff post, in order to make savings. Mr. Chairman, I will now move to page C15 for capital acquisitions. Mr. Chairman, the estimate for 23 to 24 for the Ministry of National Security Headquarters is $1,310,000, which comprised of $13,000 for computer equipment, a carry forward of $1,036,000 for the upgraded island-wide CCTV system that I spoke to earlier, and $261,000 towards the Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, or the CERT program. 2022 to 2023 accomplishments. Mr. Chairman, I will now speak very briefly to some of the accomplishments of the ministry in 2022 to 23, followed by the plans for the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year before moving to the other heads under the ministry. Cybersecurity. Mr. Chairman, a cybercrime bill is currently being drafted that will ensure that Bermuda's legislation meets the requirements of the Budapest Convention. This legislation will provide modern definitions of cybercrime and will provide an effective foundation for investigating and prosecuting cybercrimes. Cybersecurity. Mr. Chairman, the cybersecurity key accomplishments during financial year 2022 to 2023 included to ensure Bermuda critical service such as our energy supply, telecommunications, water infrastructure, and government are adequately protected against increasing cyber threats. A cybersecurity bill has been drafted and will be shortly tabled in the House of Assembly. The ministry continues to lead the development of a comprehensive information systems risk management program. With key stakeholders identify cyber risks impacting government information and systems, and develop strategies, policies, and standards to ensure the risks are adequately addressed. The security manager during financial year 2022 to 23 provided cybersecurity guidance and assistance for heads of departments, government staff, vendors and contractors, and civil aviation security committees. National Security also provided support to government departments for securing their IT systems and information, providing guidance for appropriate planning, design, and documentation to comply with approved policies and standards and meet security requirements and defined security objectives. The ministry held a cybersecurity incident response capacity building workshop with the International Telecommunications Union and Bermuda Critical Information Infrastructure organizations that included incident response exercises and training related to best practices. The ministry performed the National Cyber Risk Assessment of Bermuda Critical National Infrastructure Sector entities in collaboration with an independent international team of cybersecurity experts. The Gang Violence Reduction Team. Mr. Chairman, the mission of the Gang Violence Reduction Team is to aid in the transition of at-risk individuals away from delinquent peer groups and toxic environments with the aim of reducing violent crime in Bermuda, to change the pattern of behavior of individuals involved in group and gang violence and reintegrate them back into mainstream society, to prevent preteens and adolescents from joining gangs and engaging in antisocial behavior by reestablishing positive social bonds, to create opportunities of employment for young people and individuals who have previously not been employable due to antisocial backgrounds, to connect at-risk youth, men and women, with the necessary helping agencies that will aid in addressing mental and social health issues, to place more focus on fostering and sustaining positive interpersonal relationships. Mr. Chairman, the Ministry Gang Violence Reduction Team, led by Bishop Leroy Bean, has worked tirelessly throughout the year to meet their mission by providing a number of programs, including the Redemption Program, a program aimed to be socially restorative and discourages criminal behavior. The program includes case management services, educational services, and post-training support. School outreach. The team continues to focus resources on school outreach. Schools are a primary recruiting space for gangs and antisocial behavior. Work Placement and Mentoring Program is a job placement program that employs and targets at-risk youths who participated in the high school intervention programs. Early intervention programs. Early intervention programs include the Hype Kings and I Am program, which are delivered at the primary and middle school level that target at-risk boys. The Coordinated Crisis Response Team. This team is available following a crisis or serious incident to restore peace in the community and assist family members, relatives, or witnesses to violent crimes. Mediations and negotiation. The team assists where needed to bridge gaps and foster relationships. Community service, available to support young people in obtaining their court-mandated community service hours. Mr. Chairman, the team also provides non-traditional counseling sessions and family group sessions. It monitors court sessions and provides client advocacy support during court. It connects clients to various social supports, including financial assistance, legal aid, and food support. It provides clients who are seeking employment with assistance in developing resumes and applying for jobs. It provides conflict resolution service and mediating between clients to provide further incidents.
Senator, if I can just interrupt just 1 second, just want to recognize Minister Weeks from National Security who just joined us. So welcome, Minister Weeks. Nice to have you here with us this morning. Thank you. Back to you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we're going to go on to the Disaster Reduction Risk Management, or DERM. Mr. Chairman, in 2018, the Ministry of National Security form the Disaster Risk Reduction and Mitigation Team, known as the DERM Team. The mission statement of the DERM Team is to build national disaster risk reduction and mitigation capacities with our community partners and stakeholders by identifying and reducing the underlying drivers of risk to save lives and protect property. The DERM functions as the coordinating body between first responder agencies, governmental agencies, non-governmental agencies, and other organizations. The goal of the team is to prevent new and to reduce existing disaster risks through the implementation of integrated and inclusive measures that prevent and reduce hazard exposure and vulnerability to disaster, increase preparedness for response and recovery, and thus strengthen resilience. The key accomplishments of the Disaster Risk Management and Reduction and Mitigation Team for this current budget cycle include coordinating Emergency Measures Organization, or EMO, executive meetings for Tropical Storm Alex, Hurricane Earl, and Hurricane Fiona. The DERM team continues to work with Skyport Corporation on the updating and training required for the airport emergency plan. Small exercise modules are planned each year with a large live exercise every 3 years, the last being in November 2021. The DERM has been assisting Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority with the civil aviation investigation of air incidents and accidents regulations in force in each of the territories. Hurricane season 2022 saw another active season in which the DERM team prepared public messaging. The team also stood up the EMO Operations Center at the Hamilton Fire Station, partnered with the Ministry of Public Works to use a web-based hurricane reporting tool for responding agencies. The team has chaired the monthly supply chain meetings with stakeholders, including government departments and the private sector, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. In November, the DERM team worked with the Department of the Environment and National Resources in coordinating a multi-agency tabletop oil pollution exercise, which involves 16 local agencies. This will develop into a multi-agency live exercise scheduled for Tobacco Bay in May 2023. In January, a planning conference was held on the Memorandum of Understanding between the UK, USA, and Bermuda for the response to a serious risk to public health or safety. This will lead to a live tabletop exercise to test this MOU. In February 2023, the emergency broadcast frequency FM 100.1 was upgraded with a digital component, complementing the analog station for listeners to tune in online. In February, the DERM team has coordinated along with Government House the training of approximately 30 staff from EMO executive agencies on a 4-day multi-agency Gold Incident Command training course. Over the last few weeks, there were 3 training sessions held on oil response training. Mr. Chairman, event coordination occurred this past year for the following events where agency contingency planning was coordinated by the DERM team. SAIL GP in May, Bermuda Day activities in May, Queen's Jubilee celebrations in June, Heroes Weekend held in June, Newport to Bermuda race in June, Cup Match Weekend held in July, Pride events held in August, the Rugby Classic in October, PGA that was held in October, the International Triathlon held in November, the Boat Parade in December. 2023 to 2024 plans. Mr. Chairman, in keeping with our mission of working together to keep you safe, our plans for the next financial year are in cybersecurity. Mr. Chairman, the cybersecurity plans for 2023 to 24, in addition to the legislation already mentioned, will include the national security will establish the dedicated cybersecurity unit. The unit will provide independent assessments, guidance, threat intelligence, threat hunting, IT system security testing, IT systems monitoring, incident response, and investigation to help government ensure that IT staff, vendors, and contractors are implementing, operating, and maintaining IT systems with adequate security in alignment with industry standards. The cybersecurity unit will also establish and operate a national cybersecurity incident response team, CSIRT, in alignment with the recommendations from the International Telecommunications Union. To ensure the government has an adequate capability to detect and investigate cyber attacks and breaches of government information and IT systems, the Ministry of National Security will implement, operate, and maintain a secure, centralized logging and monitoring system. The security manager, working closely with the Chief Information Officer and head of the PATI PIPA unit, improve the government's ability to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recovery from cyber threats. The Gang Violence Reduction Team. Mr. Chairman, the Gang Violence Reduction Team will continue to work in our community to reduce gang tensions and provide a way out of gang life, as well as provide children with alternative life choices to gang life. We must give the next generation a viable alternative to gang life. Mr. Chairman, the team will not only continue with the existing programs, but will also launch the Stop the Violence campaign. It will launch the specialized counseling support services to the coordinated crisis response team clients. Following violent incidents such as a shooting or a stabbing, there are shockwaves sent throughout our community, and many different groups experience trauma. Witnesses, family members, community members are all significantly impacted by these violent incidents. Members in need of extra support will be eligible for counseling services. Disaster reduction risk management. Mr. Chairman, the DERM team will assist government ministries in developing business continuity policies and plans for implementation post-impact of a disaster. Through the Emergency Measures Organization, coordinate the government's response to a disaster, whether natural or man-made, where the local community has been impacted greatly. This will require the DERM team to meet with government ministries and external stakeholders in developing and exercising emergency plans, such as hurricane planning, shelter planning, cybersecurity plans, cruise ship incident planning, airport emergency plans, marine contingency plans for oil pollution, major event safety and security plans, testing interagency command, control, and communications, mass casualty plans, chemical facility plans, pandemic plans, and critical national infrastructure planning. Mr. Chairman, the DERM team will continue to work on the following exercises and planning processes. Cruise ship planning. With the cruise ship season for 2023 scheduled to be over 220 cruise ship visits, a record for Bermuda. The DERM team, in coordination with the port agencies, marine and ports, the cruise ship agents, and multi-agency stakeholders, will host 5 multi-agency tabletop exercises with the 5 regular callers in April and May to test and develop contingency planning. For airport exercise planning, The Durham team will assist all the airport agencies in 2023 and 2024 with tabletop and live modular exercises that are required by the Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority. 2 days of training is scheduled for May 2023. The next large-scale live airport exercise has to be scheduled by November 2024. The Durham team are assisting the Department of Environment and Natural Resources with coordinating a live oil spill exercise in Tobacco Bay scheduled for May 2023. For tsunami exercising, Bermuda will again participate in this annual event in March 2024. This exercise is organized by UNESCO under the umbrella of the United Nations and NOAA and is a regional, multi-country tsunami exercise involving approximately 30 countries. The Durham team will hold training for major incident commanders, which may be incorporated into exercises or held separately. The Durham team will liaise with BHB to assist in coordinating the multi-agency mass casualty exercise to be held in 2024. Mr. Chairman, the Durham will work with event organizers in developing their event safety plans for large and/or complex local and international spectator events. The agricultural show in April, Bermuda Day and weekend activities in May, Heroes or Carnival weekend events in June, Cup Match in St. George's in July, the Rugby Classic in October, PGA Golf in November, International Race Weekend in January, and the International Triathlon in April 2024. This involves key stakeholders such as Bermuda Police Service, Bermuda Fire and Rescue Services, medical such as Bermuda Hospital Board and St. John's Ambulance, and subject to the type of event, other government entities meeting with the organizers to ensure that they are in compliance with applicable legislation and regulations. Mr. Chairman, this concludes Ministry Headquarters, and I will now move to Head 06, Defense.
Thank you, Senator. Please proceed.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I am pleased to present the estimates of revenue and expenditure for Head Number 6, Defense, which can be found on pages B261 to B265 of the Current Accounts Estimate Book. General. Mr. Chairman, Head 06 comprises the Defense Department, the Royal Bermuda Regiment, or the Regiment. The regiment's irreplaceable role is to provide operational and surge capacity to support Bermuda, the government, and its people in routine matters or in times of emergency. Mandate. Mr. Chairman, under the authority of the Defense Act 1965, the Royal Bermuda Regiment's mandate is to be a military force maintaining the necessary standards of manpower, training, and equipment to enable it to protect Bermuda's interests at home and overseas. It conducts its training and operations while also acting as a center of excellence for all Bermudians to be able to personally and professionally develop while serving their country. Mission statement. Mr. Chairman, the mission of the Department of Defense is the Royal Bermuda Regiment is to provide military resources in order to protect Bermuda's interests. Mr. Chairman, under direction of the Governor as Commander-in-Chief and in consultation with the Minister of National Security, the regiment's finances are used to execute its mission of protecting Bermuda's interests. It achieves this mission by conducting the following mandated tasks. A, force protection. These are the means and measures to minimize the vulnerability of people, infrastructure, and high-value assets from threats and hazards. This ranges from military security and public order to explosive ordnance disposal. B, humanitarian aid, and disaster relief. This is the organized military response to alleviate the results of a man-made or natural catastrophe, the consequences of which puts lives and livelihoods at risk. Ranging from hurricanes to oil spills and fires, the priorities are saving life, relieving suffering, limiting damage, restoring essential service, and setting the conditions for recovery. Ceremonial. The regiment provides the only local professional standard military band and accompanying troops to conduct national ceremonial and civic events. D. International assistance. Upon request, the regiment can provide military skills and resources to assist UN, NATO, and regional peace support operations or training, which enhances Bermuda's reputation in the international community. E. Enhancing Bermudian society. Since its inception, the Royal Bermuda Regiment has provided an important role by supporting the integration and development of Bermudian society in the form of a common military experience for volunteers from across Bermuda society, the opportunity to enhance life and vocational skills through direct provision of training or providing funding support for specific qualifications, involvement in regimental and wider community sporting and social activities, youth engagement through junior leaders and in partnership with the Bermuda Police Service, the facilitation of the Outward Bound Adventure Training Center. F. Coast Guard. The Coast Guard will secure Bermuda's territorial waters out to 12 nautical miles and defend the Economic Exclusion Zone, or EEZ, 200 nautical miles. Mr. Chairman, the Royal Bermuda Regiment conducts the majority of these tasks in partnership with or in support of other government departments, specifically the Emergency Measures Organization, EMO, Maritime Operations Center, Department of Environmental Protection, HM Customs Bermuda, Disaster Risk Reduction and Mitigation Team, or DERM, Bermuda Police Service, Bermuda Fire and Rescue Service, and the Bermuda Hospitals Board. B263, Current Account Estimates, General Summary. The original estimate for 2022 to 23, $7,857,000. The estimate for 2023 to 24, $8,558,000, which is an increase of $701,000 and represents a change of 9%. Business Unit 16000, Finance. Madam President, the Finance Business Unit covers the Defense Department, which holds the civilian full-time staff and the accountant function for the Royal Bermuda Regiment. The 2023-24 budget estimate is $312,000, which represents no change over fiscal year 2022 to 23. Business Unit 16005, Recruitment. Mr. Chairman, the Recruitment Business Unit covers the advertising, promotion, and local training expenses. The 2023-24 budget estimate is $113,000, which is an increase of $26,000 or 26% increase over the 2022 to 23 financial year. The reason for the increase is primarily increased funding for the recruitment team with the focus of attracting more Bermudians into the service. Business Unit 16010, Regimental Headquarters. Mr. Chairman, the Regimental Headquarters Cost Center covers all of the regiment employees for Defense 06, employee-related expenses, Marine Fleet, Vehicle Fleet, and insurance. The 2023 to 24 budget estimate is $4,135,000, which is an increase of $349,000 or 9% over the 22 to 23 financial year. This increase is primarily funding for the Coast Guard to its approved employee ceiling of 14 and the funding of the quartermaster post. Business Unit 16020, Quartermaster. Mr. Chairman, the Quartermaster Cost Center covers all the operational and logistical services for the regiment in relations to facilities for land and sea forces. The 2023 to 24 budget estimate is $1,501,000, which is an increase of $158,000 or 12% over the 2022 to 23 financial year. This is due to an increase in the part-time wages and operational expenses. It should be noted that wages did not increase with the rest of the civil service back in 2018. Therefore, the increase for part-time wages of 4.5% was not reflected in budget year 2022 to 23. For this budget year 23 to 24, all part-time rates have been updated, and the estimate now includes the 4.5% increase in part-time wages, which provides a more realistic remuneration for the commitment, as well as provides a financial incentive to volunteer. Business Unit 16030, Ceremonial, or HADR, header. Mr. Chairman, the Ceremonial or Header Business Unit covers the ceremonial and the humanitarian and disaster relief training expenses. The 2023 to 24 budget estimate is $288,000, which is an increase of $45,000 or 19% over the 2022 to 23 financial year. This increase is again due to the increase in the part-time soldiers' wages. Business Unit 16040, Internal Security or MACA. Mr. Chairman, the Internal Security Business Unit covers the training expenses related to internal security and military aid to civil authority. The 2023 to 24 budget estimate is $211,000, which is an increase of $28,000 or 15% over the 2022 to 23 financial year. This again is due to an increase in the part-time soldiers' wages. Business Unit 16060, the Bermuda Cadet Corps. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Cadet Corps Business Unit provides for the Junior Leaders Program, training, and youth engagement. As part of the curriculum, staff of the Royal Bermuda Regiment facilitate adventure training, drill, campcraft, and similar military activities to young Bermudians below the age of military enlistment. The main aim is to enhance the leadership and decision-making skills of school-age cadets in order to make them better citizens. It also provides a positive experience that will attract some to serve full-time or part-time in the regiment when they reach the age of majority. The program runs weekly throughout the school year and incorporates meetings, weekend camps, and an annual exercise. Mr. Chairman, the 2023-24 budget estimate is $52,000, which represents no change over the 2022 to 23 financial year. Business Unit 16075, Overseas Camp. Mr. Chair, this year the Overseas Camp will take place in Guyana in July 2023 as part of the multinational trade wind exercise with other Caribbean nations. Since the formation of the unit, the Overseas Camp has been the culmination of the annual training cycle and remains a mandated requirement by the governor. The exercise provides tangible evidence that the regiment is fit for role and able to operate at the scale and intensity required to complete their missions and tasks. The complexity and range of activities conducted on land and at sea are not possible to achieve without Bermuda. It is therefore necessary that the camp is within Bermuda. It is therefore necessary that the camp is conducted abroad. It is also a primary component that encourages retention of regiment personnel. Mr. Chairman, the 2023 to 24 budget estimate is $820,000, a $26,000 or 3% increase over the 2022 to 23 financial year. This increase funds more soldiers to attend and benefit from the annual overseas camp. Business Unit 16080, Training and Validation. Mr. Chairman, the Training and Validation Cost Center covers the expenses related to the training of recruits and promotion courses. To ensure our military personnel are current, qualified, and competent, it is essential that the selection and training system provides robust development and transparent assessment at all levels and for all trade groups. The training and validation budget ensures these courses and qualifications are delivered in the most appropriate and cost-effective way possible, only seeking external instruction when it is not possible through local resources. All routine training exercises subscribe to the UK Armed Forces Recognized Assurance System, the defense system approach to training to ensure safety and consistency. Mr. Chairman, the 2023-24 budget estimate is $531,000, which is a decrease of $7,000 or 1%. Savings are being made through more on-island courses, saving in airfares and other expenses for overseas courses. Business Unit 16085, Marine Operations. Mr. Chairman, the Marine Operations Cost Center covers the costs associated with the Regiment Coast Guard's operating expenses and part-time wages. The unit has 8 full-time soldiers and 1 officer. They are supported by part-time staff who train and operate on weekends and public holidays in order to provide safety and security on and in Bermuda's waters 24 hours a day throughout the year. Mr. Chairman, the 2023 to 24 budget estimate is $595,000, which is an increase of $79,000, or 15% over the 2022 to 23 financial year. This increase is primarily due to the proposed increasing in the training and increase in the part-time wages for the unit. B264, Subjective Analysis of Current Account Estimates. Mr. Chairman, I now draw your attention to page B264 of the Current Account Estimate Book. Salaries have increased by $418,000 or 12%. This increase is attributable to the funding of 4 full-time staff salaries and wages, which saw an increase of $134,000 or 7%. These 2 increases will allow the regiment to fully staff the Coast Guard to its approved manning levels of 14 employees for inshore operations, increase the training periods for all part-time staff, and allow the regiment to support training and operations in accordance with the governor's and commanding officers' directives. Travel has seen an increase of $46,000 or 10%, and this is due to putting back the funding for the aircraft charter of $300,000, as the regiment will be participating in Trade Winds 2023, which will be held in Guyana in July 2023. Repair and maintenance has increased by $76,000 or 20%, mainly due to the aging facility at War Camp, Scenic House, and the new Coast Guard substation that will come online at the old St. David's Post Office. Mr. Chairman, the decrease in employer overhead of $35,000 or 28% and clothing, uniforms, and laundry by $20,000 or 9% is due to a reallocation between the object codes of salaries and wages to once again ensure that the regiment is able to carry out their responsibility as directed by the command officer. Personnel. Mr. Chairman, the regiment currently employs 39 full-time staff, of which 3 are civilian. You will note that the original estimate for the 2022 to 23 budget year was 44 employees. The 2023 to 24 estimate will provide for 44 employees, including 4 additional Coast Guard employees, which is an addition to the current full-time staff of the regiment, and a part-time strength of 261. C7, Capital Development. Mr. Chairman, I now draw your attention to page C7, Capital Development. The regiment have budgeted funds for capital development of $350,000 for the following projects. A, Defense. Coast Guard Maintenance Shed, $50,000. These funds will be used to start the mechanical and engineering support for the new maintenance shed to be built at Scenic House in Dockyard. B, Defense, the officers' mess bathroom, $150,000. Since the start of the Bermuda Regiment, now the Royal Bermuda Regiment, the warrant officers' and sergeants' mess was not designed with females in mind. These funds will be used to carry out the renovation of the male bathrooms in order to provide female senior non-commissioned officers their own shower and toilet facilities. Defense, Coast Guard Unit St. David's, $150,000. To help reduce operational costs for the Coast Guard and to better support the East End Mariners, it was prudent that the Coast Guard establish an East End operating location. The cost and the logistics of launching a boat and crew out of Dockyard every day is cost prohibitive, which has worsened due to the increase in fuel and the time required to move boat and crew on and off shift. These funds will be used to renovate the old St. David's Post Office into a serviceable substation for the Coast Guard. C15, Capital Acquisition. Mr. Chairman, I now draw your attention to C15, Capital Acquisitions. The Royal Bermuda Regiment have budgeted funds for capital acquisitions of $191,000 as follows. A, residential equipment, $27,000. These funds will be used to replace a number of failing and end-of-life air conditioners within classrooms, as well as barrack room accommodations. These are essential due to year-round training in camps, which are part of the regiment's contemporary training and operations procedures. B, shelter systems, $164,000. It has been over 30 years since the Royal Bermuda Regiment has replaced or upgraded its shelter systems or military tents. They are beyond their lifespan and are now in disrepair. These funds will be used to replace and upgrade a portion of their shelter systems. Plans for 2023 to 24. Mr. Chairman, the Royal Bermuda Regiment is looking forward to this upcoming year, as this is the highest budget that they have received in years outside of the COVID-19 response. This budget reflects the continued investment in the Department of Defense and the Royal Bermuda Regiment since moving from conscription to an all-volunteer regiment. Some of the key activities that the Royal Bermuda Regiment are looking forward to are A, increase interoperability with the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources under the Blue Belt Blue Shield program. This joint initiative creates the conditions for greater interoperability between the U.S. Coast Guard, USCG, UK Marine Management Organization, or MMO, DENR, and the Maritime Operations Center to coordinate, enforce, and monitor Bermuda's EEZ. Hosting the commanding officers of the British Overseas Territories in Bermuda for a conference in May, that was B. C, expanding youth engagement initiatives and assisting with the Outward Bound program. D, we will hire 4 new full-time staff into the Royal Bermuda Regiment Coast Guard, which will fulfill the approved manning levels from 2016. This will also allow us to staff the new East End substation at the former St. David's Post Office and give better coverage and enforcement of the East End of the island. E, stand up an Eastern Operations Base for the Royal Bermuda Regiment Coast Guard located in St. David's. This initiative will reduce fuel costs from operations and enhance productivity, as the transfer of vessels and crew would be reduced to get staff on shift, as they will not originate out of the West End facility in Dockyard. This will also allow the CG and the fisheries wardens, when working on joint operations, to allow for better response time and coordination. F, recruit 50 new soldiers over a series of 2 recruit camps, September 2023 and February 2024. As the Royal Bermuda Regiment has an official mandate to ensure that it is able to carry out its missions and tasks, its goal is to return to its operational strength of 360 personnel. Although the retention of current personnel is high, recruiting and retention remain a high priority for the regiment. G, under the direction of the Minister of National Security, examine options for implementing a national cadet program to assist in recruiting competent young Bermudians into our uniformed services. H, delivery of an annual test for all personnel, which includes diversity, equity, and inclusion, the only government department to have this as a mandate. I, execute a significant review of unit policies and publications to enhance transparency and treat operational risk. J, deploy an overseas camp with 100 which is exercise trade winds, with 120 soldiers to Guyana in July 2023. This is anticipated to cost around $275,000 in charter fees and $300,000 in troop wages. While in Guyana, the soldiers will undertake training in the following areas: explosive ordnance disposal, or EOD, civil military coordination, cybersecurity, public relations, and internal security. The Royal Bermuda Regiment Public Order Training Team will also deliver training to multiple nations. This annual deployment is a key contributor to soldier retention as well as defense engagement with 27 partner nations. K, develop and mentor potential new Royal Bermuda Regiment full-time staff and officers within the Coast Guard and regimental headquarters. This will ensure the continuity of the Royal Bermuda Regiment and its continued investment in its people. Mr. Chairman, I am thankful to the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Beasley, and the team at the Royal Bermuda Regiment for their commitment and dedication. Mr. Chairman, I now move to Head 07, the Bermuda Police Service.
Thank you, Sandra. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate, I am pleased to present the current account estimate for the Bermuda Police Service Head 07, which can be found on pages B266 to B270 of the Estimates of Revenue and Expenditure book. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Police Service's mission is making Bermuda safer. The objectives of the service are to maintain the confidence of the community, treat all persons fairly with dignity and respect, protect vulnerable victims, reduce crime, particularly focusing on serious crime and gang-related criminality, reduce antisocial behavior, and enhance road safety. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Police Service, or BPS, carries out its objectives by aligning its organizational structure to maintain its community safety agenda and the prevention of criminal risk, both locally and internationally, through a funded establishment of 492 employees. Mr. Chairman, the BPS continues to advance its 2021 to 2026 strategic and operational plan. The budget estimate for financial year 2023 to 24 will allow a number of key initiatives to progress. The BPS Gang Targeting Team continues to work with the Ministry of National Security's Gang Violence Reduction Team to reduce the threat in this area and seek to divert persons from gang-related criminality. The staffing of the previous Marine section on a temporary basis continues to support the Coast Guard as it journeys toward its full complement of staff. The BPS continues its work regarding standards of professional behavior and anti-corruption policy and procedure, to which relevant best practice is being utilized by the National Anti-Corruption Committee in support of other government departments and the United Nations Anti-Corruption Self-Assessment for Bermuda. The Bermuda Police Service also continues its work in support of the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, NAMLEC, to prevent financial crime, money laundering, and counter-terrorism funding, with a strategic focus to maintain its excellent Caribbean Financial Action Task Force grading. The BPS further continues its work in support of the National Cybersecurity Governance Board to prevent and respond to cybersecurity matters and maintain Bermuda's reputation as a premier international financial jurisdiction. The BPS is working to implement a framework for greater multi-agency collaboration on the problem of domestic abuse. We seek to enhance communication and improve training with a view to improving service and reducing victimization. Expenditure overview. Mr. Chairman, I will now draw your attention to the current account estimates for Head 07, which can be found on page B267. A total of $62,625,000 has been allocated for Head 07 for the financial year 2023 to 24. This represents an increase of $467,000, a 1% increase over the budget for the previous financial year. Mr. Chairman, I will now address each of the BPS's 6 programs and corresponding business units as set out on page B267. Program 0701, Commissioner's Office. Mr. Chairman, the Commissioner's Office is in Business Unit 17000 and has an estimate for the fiscal year 2023 to 24 of $47,157,000. This represents a decrease of $272,000, a 1% decrease from the fiscal year 2022 to 23. The decrease reflects a planned decrease in overtime by increased recruitment and operational efficiencies. Program 0702, Corporate Services Division. Mr. Chairman, the Corporate Services Division has an estimate for the fiscal year 2023 to 24 of $6,907,000. This represents an increase of $322,000, a 5% increase over the fiscal year 2022 to 23. In the 2023 to 2024 budget, the Professional Conduct Unit has been realigned and merged into the Commissioner's Office. Offsetting this realignment are increases in Business Unit 17010, Human Resources, which has an increase of $33,000. Business Unit 17020, Finance and Administration, with an increase of $91,000. Business Unit 17025, Information Management Services, an increase of $250,000. Business Unit 17190, Training and Development, an increase of $68,000. Business Unit 17310, Uniform Stores, an increase of $50,000. Business Unit 17020 funds the cost of repairs and maintenance to the various properties housing policing units. Buildings in Prospect are aging and in constant need of repair, and it is estimated an additional $91,000 will be required. Business Unit 17025, an increase of $250,000. This business unit funds the various technological needs of the BPS and the increasing cost of computer hardware and software. Business Unit 17190 funds police training. An additional $68,000 is budgeted to ensure that officers have access to training that has lagged owing to the pandemic. The $50,000 increase in Business Unit 17310 is attributed to an update in uniforms. Program 0703, Community Policing Division. Mr. Chairman, the Community Policing Division has an estimate for the fiscal year 2023 to 24 of $2,165,000. This represents an increase of $77,000, a 4% increase over the fiscal year 2022 to 23. The increase is mainly due to inflation, additional officers, and the various needs required for the 3 police facilities in Hamilton, 17040, the eastern end of the island, 17041, and the western end of the island, 17042. Program 0704, Support Services Division. Mr. Chairman, the Support Services Division has an estimate for the fiscal year 2023 to 24 of $3,488,000. This represents an increase of $60,000 or 2% from the fiscal year 2022 to 23. Due to policing priorities, Business Unit 17055, tape transcribing, was merged into Business Unit 17090, the Court Liaison Unit. This results in a real increase of $20,000 for the Court Liaison Unit. In addition, Business Unit 17120, Tactical Operations, was merged with Business Unit 17105, the Police Support Unit. The increase of $37,000 is solely a result of the merger. Program 0708, Serious Crime Divisions. Mr. Chairman, the Serious Crime Division has an estimate for the fiscal year 2023 to 24 of $2,583,000. This represents an increase of $280,000 or 12% from the fiscal year 2022 to 23. The increase is due to the increasing need for professional investigative services. Program 0710, Bermuda Police Reserves. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Police Reserves has an estimate for the fiscal year 2023 to 24 of $332,000 and represents no change in the budget over the 2022 to 23 fiscal year. Subjective analysis. Mr. Chairman, I would now like to address page B268 of the current account estimates. This page includes the subjective analysis of current account estimates and revenue summary. The subjective analysis of current account estimates. Mr. Chairman, 11 of the object codes see no change or change of less than 5% in the estimates for the financial year 2023-24 over the budget for 2022 to 23. I will limit my comments to salaries and the 5 that illustrate material changes. Mr. Chairman, salaries have decreased by $892,000 or 2%. Salaries include various benefits and payments mandated under collective bargaining agreements. The most expensive cost item is overtime. The proposed budget reflects the planned reduction in overtime by recruiting additional officers and operational efficiencies. Mr. Chairman, other personnel costs has a proposed budget of $2,707,000, an increase of $227,000 or 9% to meet the increasing cost of medical benefits for officers. Training costs increased by $79,000 or 22% to offset training that was unavailable during the pandemic. Mr. Chairman, advertising and promotion costs have increased by $19,000 or 29%. The PPS is seeking innovative ways to enhance service delivery by leveraging the opportunities created by social media and alternative media outlets. Mr. Chairman, professional services are budgeted to increase by $578,000 or 23%, owing to the increased need for professional services and increasing litigation. Repairs and maintenance increases of $406,000 or 18% are a result of the aging Bermuda Police Service properties combined with inflationary pressures in the cost of labor and materials. The proposed increase of $46,000 or 2% in materials and supplies is to reflect increases in both fuel costs and increasing costs necessary to repair an aging vehicle fleet. Revenue summary. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Police Service has estimated to collect $698,000 in revenue for financial year 2023 to 24 from police clearance certificates or background checks, firearms, and security guard licenses. Employee numbers, full-time equivalent, or FTEs. Mr. Chairman, the funded employee numbers or full-time equivalents are being increased by 20 to 492 over the revised estimate for financial year 2022 to 23. This increase is to ensure the BPS has sufficiently funded posts to meet operational needs. Currently, the BPS is staffed by 371 police officers and 68 support staff. Unfortunately, the BPS is 49 police officers below the funded establishment. This shortfall impacts the level of policing activity in response to crime, as well as the welfare of officers who are delivering the service while short-staffed. Unfortunately, the current local recruitment drive is only expected to yield about 10 Bermudian officers. In addition to the 10 local officers, 15 trained officers from both the Caribbean and the UK will be recruited to augment investigative and firearms capacity. 2022 to 23 accomplishments. Mr. Chairman, I will now speak to some of the accomplishments the Bermuda Police Service had in 2022 to 2023. Operation Vega. Mr. Chairman, since the inception of the well-publicized Operation Vega, over 5,000 traffic tickets and 840 motorist advice notices have been issued. In 2023 alone, 68 traffic tickets have been issued for persons driving more than 70 kilometers per hour. Additionally, the Bermuda Police Service has increased its communications with the public through mainstream media and social media platforms. The department looks forward to seeing how this level of engagement will positively affect driver behavior. New Recruit Foundation Course. Mr. Chairman, February 2022 saw the start of a Police Recruit Foundation course with 21 new student officers. These officers should take to the streets in earnest this summer, and the new officers will bring welcome relief to their colleagues and reduce demands on the overtime budget. Mr. Chairman, I will now provide the Senate chamber with some sobering statistics on what the Bermuda Police Service dealt with over the calendar year, January to December 2022. Mr. Chairman, in making Bermuda safer, between the 1st of January 2022 and the 31st of December, the service responded to 13,305 events or incidents, of which 1,480 were licensed premises COVID compliance checks. Mr. Chairman, there were 2,451 addressed during the period, which is a 49% increase over the 1,639 arrests in 2021, which was impacted with COVID-related restrictions, including curfew on the community. Mr. Chairman, in 2022, 3,362 crimes were recorded and investigated. That include 9 murders, 5 of which by a firearm. Of the 23 murders recorded from 2020, 10 involved a firearm and 9 involved a knife. Mr. Chairman, the service dealt with 1,268 road traffic collisions, of which 11 were fatalities and 120 involved serious injury. This compares with 17 fatalities and 106 serious injury road traffic collisions in 2021. Mr. Chairman, 9,174 tickets and 1,205 stop and search forms were issued that help to change driver behavior and reduce opportunities for violence. In addition, roadside sobriety opportunities have been used to positively change the culture of drink driving in Bermuda. Mr. Chairman, the BPS has implemented a gang violence reduction strategy with a core focus on partnership. It consists of 3 pillars: prevention, which includes education and awareness initiatives aimed at stopping young offenders from escalating into prolific offenders, and preventing children from becoming involved in criminality. Catch and convict, which is police focused on targeting and suppression of antisocial activity. Resettlement and rehabilitation, which is a multi-agency collaboration to encourage effective rehabilitation and resettlement of persons leaving prison services. 2023 to 2024 plans. Mr. Chairman, in keeping with our mission statement of Bermuda, making Bermuda safer, The Bermuda Police Service will continue the delivery of its strategic and operational plan for the period 2021 to 2026. The 5 key priorities are reducing serious crime, protecting vulnerable persons, raising confidence in the police, reducing harm on our roads, and developing digital policing. Additionally, 7 new strategic ambitions have been set to support members of the BPS in achieving their full potential and assisting their professional development. The plan will be governed by the Bermuda Police Service Strategic Executive Group and shared with the public. Capital projects. Mr. Chairman, I now move to page C15 and capital acquisitions. The budget for 2023 to 24 is $1,308,000 allocated as follows. $718,000 to replace the software that the Bermuda Police Service uses to maintain its operational records. The record management system replacement will maximize the synergy between BPS partner agency and enhance BPS efficiency and effectiveness. The implementation of the RMS will allow BPS to produce digital case files and will support the increased use of body-worn cameras and dash camera footage. Replacing the aging record management system supports the BPS priority of developing digital policing. Mr. Chairman, $400,000 is allocated to replace 5 marked police vehicles and 5 unmarked motor cars in addition to a passenger van. The purchases of these vehicles are considered a priority for the police. Including last year's purchases, this will equate to a total of 15 cars, 7 motor vehicles, and a passenger van being replaced. The Bermuda Police Service vehicles experience a tremendous amount of wear and tear in a short span of time. This year's funding will allow for some of the patrol vehicles to be replaced. The government of Bermuda is committed to ensuring that the Bermuda Police Service has the equipment it needs to keep Bermuda safer. Mr. Chairman, $189,000 is budgeted to begin to replace various aspects of the Bermuda Police Service's IT hardware, including computers and network servers. Unfortunately, most of the critical components of the network are both end of life and end of support. Some of the equipment is 18 years or more old. This year's capital allocation will enable the replacement process to begin. Mr. Chairman, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Commissioner Simons and his team at the Bermuda Police Service for making Bermuda safer. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the current and capital accounts estimates for head number 7. And with your consent, I will now move to head number 12, customs.
Thank you, Senator. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members, I am pleased to present the current account estimate for the Customs Department Head 12, which can be found on pages B271 to B274 of the Estimates of Revenue and Expenditure book. Mr. Chairman, the Customs Department's mission is protecting Bermuda's border and promoting economic development. The objectives of the department are to assess and collect customs duty and fees on imported goods, to enforce customs laws and administer other statutes controlling the international movement of goods and people, to prevent the smuggling of drugs and other illegal commodities, enforcing international conventions for environmental protection and money laundering, and agency work for immigration, health, transport, control, and environment, to provide information and assistance to the public regarding customs laws and regulations. Mr. Chairman, the Customs Department's vision is to be a modern, effective, and efficient customs administration, offering professional service to all stakeholders, using international best practices, maximizing revenue collection, and protecting the borders of Bermuda. Mr. Chairman, to make this vision a reality, strategic goals have been set for customs. Strategic goal number 1, staffing, stability, and trading. Mr. Chairman, in order for the Customs Department to carry out its mission, the department will continue to provide an environment that supports the highest level of integrity. Enhancing the department's integrity as a respected law enforcement arm of the government is vital to performing our enforcement functions and will continue to be improved by ongoing training and officer development. Strategic goal number 2, legislation and operational. Mr. Chairman, to advance customs mandate of facilitating legitimate trade, assessing and collecting the government's revenue, and interdicting drugs and other contraband, the department will continue to review existing legislation and propose enhancements that will progress customs capability to fulfill its mandate in a rapidly changing environment. Strategic goal number 3, policy, procedures, and future. Mr. Chairman, the department's policies and procedures are a vital portion of its foundation, and the consistent program of updating these will enhance the department's positive work environment. One such example is the revision of the memorandums of understanding with the department's law enforcement counterparts. This will enhance the shared understanding of the department's comparable duties, aims, and objectives. Expenditure overview. Mr. Chairman, I will now draw your attention to the current account estimates for Head 12, which can be found on page B271. A total of 17,696,000 has been allocated for Head 12 for the financial year 2023 to 24. This represents an increase of $1,121,000, or a 7% increase of the original budget for the financial year 2022 to 23. Mr. Chairman, the Customs Department operates one program listed as 1201 General with 7 business units. Mr. Chairman, I will now address the business units as set out on page B271. Business Unit 22030, Airport Arrivals, Travelers. Mr. Chairman, Airport Arrivals Travelers has an estimate of $4,621,000. This represents an increase of $225,000, or 5%. The increase is due to planned recruitment, with the most significant driver being salaries. Business Unit 22050, Investigations and Audit. Mr. Chairman, Investigations and Audit has an estimate of $923,000. This represents an increase of $45,000, or 5%. Again, the increase is due to planned recruitment, with the most significant driver being salaries. Business Unit 22070, Hamilton Commercial Ops. Mr. Chairman, Hamilton Commercial Ops has an estimate of $1,015,000. This represents an increase of $36,000, or 4%. Again, the salary increase is a result of planned recruitment. Business Unit 22080, Administration. Mr. Chairman, Administration has an estimate of $5,083,000. This represents an increase of $484,000 or 11%. The Administration Business Unit is deemed the headquarters of the department, and a majority of the operational budget is allocated to this unit. For brevity and to avoid repetition, I will elaborate upon all the notable budget changes during my presentation of B272. However, the variances of note are a decrease in salaries of $51,000, an increase in overtime of $31,000, an increase in consultants of $110,000. This is specifically in connection with the introduction of the Export Control Program. An increase in rent by $81,000. This is due to the recent occupancy by Customs of the Southside facility. An increase in repair and maintenance for equipment by $102,000 and pertains to the increase in maintenance fees for the Hamilton Dock Gantry X-ray scanner. An increase in contractors of $132,000. This is in connection with the increased use of retired customs officers providing immigration primary services at the airport. An increase in software maintenance by $23,000 and an increase in electricity by $31,000. Business Unit 22090, Vessel Clearance. Mr. Chairman, Vessel Clearance has an estimate of $1,019,000. This represents an increase of $78,000 or 8%. The increase is due to an increase in salaries as a result of planned recruitment. The increase is particularly warranted as we anticipate an increased number of cruise ship visitations as well as private yachts during the upcoming season as we recover from the global pandemic, and it is Vessel Clearance, along with the interdiction unit, which provides the frontline response to these arriving vessels. Business Unit 22100, Interdiction. Mr. Chairman, interdiction has an estimate of $3,994,000. This represents an increase of $277,000 or 7%. This is also due to an increase in salaries as a result of planned recruitment. Business Unit 22110, Seaport Enforcement Team. Mr. Chairman, Seaport Enforcement Team has an estimate of $1,041,000. This represents a decrease of $24,000 or 2%. The decrease is connected to an expected reduction of overtime. Subjective analysis of current account estimates. Mr. Chairman, turning to page B272, on the table headed Subjective Analysis of Current Account Estimates, we see how the allocated funds are intended to be spent. 84% of the budget, $14,847,000, has been allocated to pay for salaries and a further $18,000 for wages. The allocation for the salary expense line has increased by $439,000 or 3%. If we momentarily turn our attention to the table headed Employee Numbers Full-Time Equivalents, we observe no movement in the number of estimated custom staff from the 2022 to 23 original of 184 to the 2022 to 23 estimate. However, it should be noted that only 174 positions had budgetary funding in 22 to 23, a difference of 10 full-time equivalents. Mr. Chairman, as of February 2023, the Customs Department had 166 staff members. Owing to retirements and resignations, there is a need to recruit additional officers, especially as we move further from the height of the pandemic, and we see an increase in travelers crossing our borders, which inevitably leads to the increased likelihood of legitimate imports as well as attempted smuggling activity. Mr. Chairman, of the remaining expense lines, the more significant changes are as follows. Other personnel costs are estimated to be $191,000, an increase of $177,000 or 1,264%. The other personnel costs in question are allowances provided for customs officers being on call and called out. For 2023 to 24, these expenses are expected to increase significantly with the increased arrivals of flights, cruise ship arrivals, and private yachts. With an increase in activity, we should expect an increase in delayed and diverted arrivals, and therefore we have budgeted an increased contingency for that purpose. Travel costs are estimated to be $14,000, an increase of $11,000 or 367%. One of the impacts of the pandemic has been the reduced ability to travel. It is anticipated that this will increase during the upcoming financial year as Bermuda Customs participated in the World Customs Organization and Caribbean Customs Law Enforcement Council conferences. Professional services are estimated to be $332,000, an increase of $246,000 or 286%. There are two main drivers of this increase. Firstly, a budget of $110,000 has been set aside to engage a consultant to conduct a scoping study and introductory program for the Export Control Project. Export control has been identified by the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee as a recommended action to take in response to Bermuda's assessment by the Financial Action Task Force. This will help bolster Bermuda's reputation as a premier financial services location, as well as mitigate against the risk of being perceived as a center for money laundering and the financing of terrorism. It is hoped that these measures will enhance Bermuda as a jurisdiction for future investment. Since Bermuda does not currently have an export control function, it will require the Customs Department making some significant adjustments, and we need to have a clear and specific plan to introduce the program, which will include adjustments to legislation, adjustments to IT systems, staff training, and educating the public as to the nature of the changes and the implications. The second main driver of this increase is the increased use of retired customs officers to perform immigration primary functions. These support officers have the training and years of experience, but are employed at a reduced cost rate and on a part-time basis. As a result, this allows the department to work more efficiently as it frees full-time customs officers from performing some immigration functions and allows them to focus on the core aspects of the custom officer role. Rentals are estimated to be $581,000, an increase of $83,000 or 7%. This is primarily due to the occupancy of the Building 110 at Southside. Building 110 is a replacement for the training and administration space that Customs formerly occupied within the old airport buildings. At the airport, Customs only paid $700 per month for a storage room. However, the department was directed to vacate the office space. A space was located at Southside, which would meet Customs needs. Estates negotiated the terms of the lease with a rent of approximately $8,000 per month. Repair and maintenance is estimated to be $1,144,000, an increase of $146,000 or 15%. This increase is due to the introduction of the planned overhaul of the Hamilton Dock X-ray scanner. The scanner will have been in operation for 10 years in September and is approaching the end of its expected useful economic life. The overhaul is expected to provide Bermuda with a refurbished scanner. Energy is estimated to be $146,000, an increase of $31,000 or 27%. This is partly due to the rise in cost of energy over the past year and partly due to the occupancy of the new Southside facility. When Customs occupied the space at the airport, they received no charge for electricity. Pardon me. Clothing, uniforms, and laundry are estimated at $75,000, a decrease of $17,000 or 18%. This is due to finding a lower cost supplier of several uniform items, including shirts. Materials and supplies are estimated at $214,000, a decrease of $10,000 or 4%. This category of expense is broad and diverse and includes office supplies, cleaning supplies, personal protective equipment, food and supplies for canines, computer supplies, consumables for detection equipment, and other miscellaneous items. The estimate is reflected of the actual expenditure in the preceding financial period. Capital expenditure. Mr. Chairman, on page C15, you will note that 2023 to 24 capital acquisition amount of $20,000 has been allocated to the Customs Department on line 76328, Customs Development. This is an amount provided to upgrade the hardware for the Global Travel Assessment System. The system plugs Customs in a real-time global database of advanced passenger information and allows the Customs Joint Intelligence Unit to review details about arriving visitors into Bermuda. That information is analyzed and has proved highly useful to Customs and Border Control. 2022 to 23 accomplishments. Mr. Chairman, during 2022 to 23, Bermuda has seen an increase in the numbers of travelers crossing our borders, both via air and sea, as restrictions arising from the pandemic have eased. To illustrate the increase, the Customs Department served 125,000 air travelers during the 2021 calendar year and over 273,000 visitors during the 2022 calendar year, a 118% increase. In addition to collecting over $200 million of revenue during 2022 to 23, Customs successfully made 5 currency seizures totaling $180,000. In the year 2022, Customs made a total of 178 drug seizures at our respective border entry points. These seizures ranged from personal use to commercial importations with intent to supply. While we await analyst certificates from the government analysts with the actual weight and drug identification for most seizures, one seizure alone contained almost 120 pounds of cannabis, which has an estimated street value of $5 million. Mr. Chair, the department also played an important role in assisting with the response to COVID. During the 2022 to 23 year, Customs, by way of its Joint Intelligence Unit, assisted the Department of Health COVID Surveillance Unit with the tracking of travelers on 112 occasions. Mr. Chairman, protecting our borders requires the Customs Department to work seamlessly with a number of other agencies domestically and internationally. Customs continues to engage in an ad hoc interagency working group initiated for the sharing of targeting and seizure intelligence data. The working group includes representatives from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, the UK National Crime Agency, NCA, the Bermuda Police Service, the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, and Homeland Security Investigations, HSI or ICE. This group has further improved the response time for foreign requests received and the sharing of information as it relates to immediate outcome number 2, IO2. Mr. Chairman, during the dates May 9 to 11, the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, 7-member team visited Bermuda on the invitation of the Customs Department to deliver training. The customized workshop entitled Countering the Financing of Proliferation was presented on May 10th and 11th at the Grotto Bay Hotel and Resort. Mr. Chairman, the critical subject of maritime sanctions evasion and proliferation financing was discussed, highlighting a nexus to the Bermuda Maritime Registry. Based on the findings, Bermuda Customs initiated a formal introduction between the Royal United Service Institute and the Bermuda Shipping and Maritime Authority. A virtual meeting was held on the 24th of June, 2022, and mutual interests were shared. Formalized steps have commenced between the stakeholders for targeted training, which commenced in December 2022. Mr. Chairman, Customs teams attended a 4-day virtual workshop hosted by the Bermuda Drug Information Network in association with the National Criminal Justice Training Center of Fox Valley Technical College. The workshop focused on drug trends and the new forms of illicit drugs entering the market. The course provided officers with awareness to the changing drug trends, equipment, and precursor drugs that persons may attempt to import. Initiatives for 2023 to 24. Mr. Chairman, in harmony with the Customs Department's strategic goals, the following initiatives are planned. Run 2 recruitment exercises during 23 to 24 to bolster activities across the department, but with particular focus being placed on enhancing marine and airport operations. The department will continue to utilize training modules developed by the World Customs Organizations, and Customs will engage with the UK Home Office for strategic planning and training opportunities. They will advance a bill in relation to Advanced Passenger Name Record data, or PNR. Operationally, the department will continue to move towards a trusted trader program where recurring legitimate importers with a good track record of customs compliance will benefit from a reduced clearance time. Provide support to the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee in its important work of preventing money laundering and terrorist financing. Mr. Chairman, the department will collaborate with Skyport in the redevelopment of the air cargo terminal to ensure that Bermuda has a first-rate, efficient, and secure facility to receive air importations. Mr. Chairman, I wish to thank the Collector of Customs, Ms. Lucinda Pearman, and her team for their continued service to Bermuda in protecting Bermuda's border and promoting economic development. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the current and capital estimates for head number 12.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
We're now at 20 minutes after 12, so we've now completed 4 of the 6 heads. I think the Department of Corrections and the Fire Services, so I can give you the option of starting and going 10 minutes into the next head, or we can break now for lunch, whatever your preference is. Senator, whatever your preference is.
We can break now.
We can break now? Okay, thank you. So for the senators and listening audience, it's just 12:20. We will break and reconvene at 2 o'clock with the commencement of the Head 25 on the Department of Corrections. Thank you.